David Seymour, 5 minutes.
Mr Speaker, a former long-serving, very honourable member of this House has counselled me to stay for the full debate and listen to what other members have to say so that you could actually join into a debate and contribute to it rather than showing up, reading a speech and leaving. And I'm mindful that if I was to respond to everything that I've just heard properly, I would completely run out of time before I got to make any points of my own. But, Mr Speaker, I have to say, what a bizarre contribution from Gareth Hughes. He told us that this is not just a technical amendment, despite it only being 6 pages, and that it was actually a bending and breaking of the law. Well, let's just be clear about what this bill does. It says that Shell, Todd, can continue doing what they were already able to do before new legislation and regulation was introduced. And they will still have this new legislation and regulation and its full effects applied to them. However, they will be given more time so that they do not come to be in contravention of these new laws and regulations. So if anything, what we are seeing is additional regulation of the offshore oil industry, and I can't believe that the Green Party would be against that. He then complained that the government frequently bends the rule of law, for example, to help people doing oil exploration who find themselves to be under threat from protest. What exactly does he want us to do? Does he really believe that anybody he happens to disagree with does not deserve the protection of the rule of law and actually should be forced to live in a world of anarchy? And then for the ultimate oddity, he said he's lodging a protest vote. He wants to see this go to select committee, but he's not actually going to vote for it to do so. As Otara Millionaires Club used to sing, Mr Speaker, how bizarre. And then we had Eugenie Sage from the Green Party say that we aren't thinking about community. And this really goes to the heart of what this debate is about. Actually, $40 million a year, approximately $1.3, $1.4 billion each and every year, about 0.5% of the country's GDP. Yeah, that does have an effect on the community, Mr Speaker, and we are going to hear about this more and more. While this is a small technical bill, it brings into stark relief the way that the extractive industry and regulation are very tightly linked. And if we look around the world, we can see just how much of a contribution economically the extractive industries make. This is particularly important at a time when regional New Zealand, places like the Northland area, for example, are facing declining and ageing populations, serious problems funding their local government, and yet they have large potential to create jobs and become wealthier through extractive industries. And you can see this all over the world. In Alberta, for example, the province of Canada that has the most extractive industries, you have an median family income of $94,000. Newfoundland and Labrador, from whence people commute by aeroplane to work in those industries, $70,000. Very clear. Western Australia, $68K. Tasmania, $48K. Again, the contrast that you get from having extractive industries and what that can do for regions, particularly regions that are facing economic challenge, that don't feel like a rock star economy, is very, very large. Have a look at, for example, a little bit closer to home, Mr Speaker. Average incomes in Taranaki, $74K for a household. In Northland, $60,000. This is the economic difference that it makes, because they don't think that making money is actually beneficial for the community, Mr Bridges. That's the problem. And perhaps another prejudice that we should raise here is that there tends to be a belief in some quarters that the extractive industries are not sexy and cool and sophisticated. And didn't we see that come out with the member Gareth Hughes waxing liberal about what we could be doing with the so-called smart economy? Well, as someone who has had one or two things to do with a few people who work in this industry, I can tell you that the extractive industries, oil and gas for instance, are enormously sophisticated, high productivity industries working with large amounts of capital, and that might explain why the average wage for a New Zealander is $50,000 and the average wage for someone in the mineral industry is $105,000. Mr Speaker, the ACT Party wholeheartedly supports this bill. Thank you very much.